So if you are new to Gelli Plate magazine transfers, let me save you a little frustration. And today I'm going to share what didn't work for me, so you can avoid pitfalls and get better results faster. Lynn Loudermilk here, the practicing crafter. First mistake, thinking that you can grab one magazine and go. Turns out that is not the way it works. Not all magazines are going to work well for your Gelli Plate transfers. And a lot of this depends on the type of paper that's used. It depends on the printing ink, and it even depends on how glossy the pages are. You can see how glossy that is even compared to these two. I hope that you can see that. This one just really shines. Rumor has it that US printed women's fashion magazines work really well, but I don't read them, and they're not exactly budget-friendly magazines. So instead, I recommend that you go ahead and start with what you already have or can access easily. If you don't have a stash of magazines at home, don't worry. Here are a few ways to find them without spending a dime. Number one, check for free publications. So many towns have free newspapers, art guides, or event magazines. So these are just a couple that I am able to pick up in Asheville. We have one called Edible Asheville, and we have the Laurel of Asheville. So the Laurel of Asheville is an arts magazine, and Edible Asheville is obviously food. We are such a foodie town. Visit your library. Some libraries will have a bin, a free bin for old periodicals, and you can just grab a few magazines out of there to play with. And then, always, what are friends and family for if you can't ask them for a magazine? So ask your friends and family what they might have that you can use. Here's the truth. Some magazines just are not going to work at all. Some magazines are going to work, certain images are going to work, and other pages are not going to work. So really, you just have to understand going in that every image might not be the image. It's just some things are just not going to pull as well. The next mistake is choosing the wrong image. In my practice sessions, I found that color does matter. For me, bold colors worked best, and strong contrast between subjects helped. This one was like partially successful. So the wording pulled, but this image was just a little too busy, I believe was the problem, and it did not pull well. It pulled a little, but it did not pull nearly as well as this that has the contrast between the dark and the light. There was just a lot of same color kind of thing going on here. Here's another one that was not a good pull for me, and it was a ad for Hendersonville, and it was a lot of green, a lot of mountains, a light blue sky, a light brown background behind the words, and it pulled a little bit on these sections that you see that are still exposed, but the rest of it did not pull well at all. Now here is a local flower that I pulled that grows in the spring, but it is a light pink and off-white flower, and then there were some light greens behind it. This picture did not pull well. I've got this example of a wheat field, lots of light browns, lots of the same color going on. Again, it did not pull well. And this was a similar situation. And then I pulled this Rolex, which was grays, and this silver watch, and nothing really stands out. So I'm not sure if it's the ink or what, but again, it did not pull well. So here's an example of a coffee that I wanted to pull. If you like coffee, it's called Fire Department FDC Firefighters Coffee. If you like coffee, you might want to check into it. I don't know. But I pulled this image from that. And you can see all of this was white. And then, so it didn't really pull the box so much, which was brown. But because of all of that white, it pulled that print really, really well. And that print was on red. So I thought that that one was very successful. It did not get all the letters, but I thought it still did a really good job pulling that print. Another one that I pulled that I do not have the ad for, and it was just because I was just randomly practicing. I had a few minutes and I didn't think to keep the ad. So, but it was an ad for Frozen. You can see Frozen right there. And yeah, that one came out really, really great. It was obviously blues and whites, and part of that picked up really well because of the contrast of the colors on the ad. So that's just a couple of good examples with all of my bad ones to show. So another issue is air bubbles. Oh, this is my experience. If you just plop your image right down onto your Gelli plate, even if you try to get rid of those air bubbles, just based on the magazine material, it can be really hard to get those bubbles out if you just lay your print straight down. So I had more success whenever I would lay it on my Gelli plate and kind of just go from side to side and work out those air bubbles as you are laying your paper down. Or, I mean, you can see where the air bubbles were. You can see where the paint the image was not touching the plate. And let me show you kind of what result we got from that. So you can see on the image, it did not pick up the whole tree. So you can see where those air bubbles were within that image. So that is just another example of what not to do. One other thing that I did before we get off of this subject, once I place I go from side to side and work out the air bubbles on my Gelli plate. Once I have done that, I do go over that with, a tool to help make sure that those air bubbles are out. But even after that, what I started doing was, once I had my image, if I completely covered my Gelli plate, I turned that over and I set a couple of heavy books on it. So that is just another thought of something that you might be able to do to keep that pressed together really well. Next, I learned that a short amount of time on the Gelli plate didn't work as well for me. Full disclosure, I have seen artists successfully transfer images quickly. So I have to assume that maybe it depends on the magazine they're using, but I have tried both methods, pressing the image down and immediately removing it versus placing the image down and just walking away for an hour or even more sometimes. The longer wait times gave me better results. At the end of the day, the best pulls I got were from just being patient. So here is actually a quick pull that was somewhat successful for me. You can see where it was green pine needles against a white background. And you can see how the pine needles came out. This was a bowl of strawberries. That was a quick pull as well. And the bowl is there. The strawberries aren't. I don't know that any amount of time would have lent to that strawberries. It could just be that there's too much going on there, not enough contrast. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but that did not work for me. But that was a quick pull. This one was a quick pull that was somewhat successful. Down at the bottom, you can see how light the cloisters is written versus these others don't seem, again, to have the same amount of contrast. And the cloisters was the one that pulled the best. Had I left it longer, would I have had different results? I'm not 100% sure, but I do feel like maybe there would have been a better pull if I had waited just a little longer. And then this was a quick pull that I did that went wrong. It didn't go completely wrong. It's not like some of the quick pulls that just were blobs. But I really feel like if I had left this one down longer, because you can see there weren't any wrinkles, so there were no real air bubbles. But this is a lady fishing in the river, and it probably was not going to pick up the river and everything all that well. But this lady, I feel like if I had left it longer and maybe turned it over, put a little bit more pressure on it, I feel like I would have picked up more of the lady that is fishing possibly. So those are just a few that were quick pulls for me. Now let me show you a couple of my pulls that I left on for a longer period of time. Let's see what we've got here. And most of these also were very bold colors. So all of these were left on for probably at least an hour, sometimes more, depending on what I had going on that afternoon. So this is a piece of art. I don't normally copy art. This was just to test for this project. But this was a piece of art out of one of our local art magazines. And this is an ad out of one of our local magazines. And I just put those together on the Gelli Plate to see what it would do since they were both from the same magazine. And you can see, I mean, you can barely make out this bird right here and a couple of the flowers. And then, of course, for the face, now it's interesting to me because the face, you know, picked up certain shadows and things off of the face. And I think it was a great pull, but I think it's fascinating how this is obviously a woman. And it says, "Vintage is always in style." It's a jewelry ad. And it really looks like once it pulled, based on where everything picked up and the ink, you know, stayed in place on the Gelli Plate, it looks like a man now. I do think that the transfer did really well. I think it's a really beautiful transfer that I'll be able to use for something else. Now this one is, let me just put these to the side until I get to them. This one, I just tore out a bunch of words. And what I was trying to do was get different colors of words to just add to this Gelli Plate for a test. Now, when all was said and done, I loved it. So I will probably do that again. But these are just some different things that I pulled just to put on this Gelli Plate to see what kind of effect I would get. So you can see Mary came out really well, and that was that dark green against white. And these were all from Southern Living. So all of these words were ripped out from a Southern Living magazine, in case you're wondering. Host Toast. This one did really well, except sometimes where we seem to pick up the white better. This one, the ink stayed in place for the red, and the white got covered. So you can't see where the snowflake is at all. But it says Host Toast. Let's see, Memories by the dozen was right here. But you can see how, you know, these are all blacks and reds and greens. Let's see, here's All Is Calm. That one didn't do quite as well, although it was black and white. Let's see, this one was A Grand Holiday, but part of it was covered, I think. So Grand Holiday and All Is Bright. So just to show you what, you know, a lot of different letters and words do. One thing that I did find was, while I like doing the images, and I thought that that was something that I really wanted to do, which is why I was practicing with it, I really like pulling the words from magazines. I think that it's a lot of fun. I think it adds a fun effect, and I definitely plan to do more of that. So let's set this one to the side. That was a success. This is my favorite. So this one, you know what color cheerwine is. I mean, it's kind of a reddish brown color. It stayed on the Gelli Plate really well where that color was. Of course, drink cheerwine, I'm guessing, is in like maybe white or something because of how well it stayed on the plate. And then we've got the little burger back here that did pretty well. Some of the letters did fairly well on there, or at least the cheerwine. The the small print didn't do nearly as well. And now this print actually came from the Our State magazine, the North Carolina magazine. So anyway, that was one that was very successful. Here is one that came from, let me see, I think that this one came from that ad magazine, the American Lifestyle magazine. Let me see if that's where I pulled that one from. Pulled the Palm Springs from that one for sure, but why was I thinking that the coffee one might have been? So the Palm Springs came from this one, and it would have been a really great print if I had not got those air bubbles in it. But so this is a really good one, and locally this is by a local real estate agent. Her name is Marlene Clevenger. Great real estate agent in case you're ever looking for real estate in Asheville, North Carolina. But the magazine that she puts out is actually published by a company called Reminder Media. So that is actually the publisher for this. But you can see where I pulled that coffee, those coffee ads out of this one. And I was really pleased with how they came out. So you can see where it's got the coffee, medium roast. The boxes, you can somewhat see where the boxes end a little bit, but you can really see because this was a very stark red and white contrast that I thought just pulled beautifully. So let's put that one to the side. And I think that's the last one that I was just going to show you of those. All right, so let's move on. I had success with American Lifestyle. I did not have success with Edible Asheville. That one did not work for me, and so I have to imagine it's the paper or the printing, the ink methods or whatever that they use that just did not work. Now, these are a couple of pages that I had tried to do from this magazine. You can see where nothing stayed. You can always tell what pulls from a magazine based on the way that it looks once you do the pull, but nothing adhered from two completely different sections of this magazine. So, but I did think that they were still fun images, so I've held on to those. Let's see, American Lifestyle worked for me. The Laurel of Asheville worked for me as well. The Our State magazine absolutely worked for me. The Southern Living magazine worked well for me. This is another Our State. I just ripped the cover off of it. So let's put those to the side. And this is one that absolutely did not work for me. However, I did want to share an image with you out of this one that I thought was going to be so cool. I thought it was going to be so much fun. Let me find it here. Okay, so this is one of the images that I tried to do out of this magazine. And I just thought that this would be so cool to do something with. And now I don't have another image like this. I mean, I could go around and ask some people if they have one. But the other thing that I did not do that I should have done, I should have made a copy or three just in case that original image didn't pull, you know, and then that way I would have been allowed to experiment without fear of actually losing the image. Because now, I mean, I could use this image, you know, for something just as it is, but I won't be able to get that Gelli Plate transfer that I was hoping to get and to see how that would have come out for me. So the last thing I can say that I did wrong was I did not make copies of images that I really would like to have had. With that, you know, in the comments, absolutely tell me if you are one of those wonderful artists that seem to be able to pull these images quickly after you put them down on the plate. I would love to know if there's a certain thing that you're doing or what magazines you are using, just so that I may try those. And also, you know, any magazines that have worked for you or failed for you. Let's just figure this out together. So put that information in the comments so everybody will be able to see that information. All right, thanks for sticking around. Get out there, practice, practice, practice. Enjoy the process, and don't forget to join me for my next video. Bye.